and our responses, particularly in the light of freshwater and carbon. And that's fantastic and essential, of course, but it's very easy to lose sight of a couple of things. One is that people need to be able to farm profitably, they need to be able to farm productively, and they need to be able to fit farm systems to the land and the climate and the people in a way that provides the best outcomes. And that is, and this is where I'm heading, that is a complex jigsaw puzzle. Right? It's not easy to kind of say how do we fit a farm system best to the land and everything else that goes around that. And it's very easy in today's world of sort of 20-second sound bites to look for what's the silver bullet. Oh, we just feed our cattle seaweed and we'll be right, or whatever else it might be. And we know that farm systems are complex, they have feedback loops, it's not that simple. And today we have some people in the room who have some fantastic experience and some learnings from working through farm systems in both a research and a practical way. So we're very excited to hear from those people. I'm going to invite Graham Ogle to come up now, and Graham's going to jump up and down during the day introducing people. I guess Graham has done a lot of work in recent weeks working with many of you, organising today, and on behalf of Rezare Systems, we're very grateful for that work as well. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you, Andrew. Rezare's been planning to run this workshop for quite some time, and it's a real pleasure to have a room full of all the people we want here for this workshop. What I want to do is just cover why we're running the workshop and a little bit about how. I think this is a chance for... Rezare's been looking for the chance to have a bit of a, and I found the word the other day, a policy refresh, a strategy refresh, sorry. Very cool word. And we thought, what better way is there to have a strategy refresh than invite all the right people, and we think you're all the right people, to a venue and talk about what we see as really valuable to farmers. What is value? What is value when we say, of all the things we can provide a farmer, what are the valuable things? I guess I started my career, my idea of that really was forged out of when I started my career in the 1980s, which meant that I had 2 decades of excruciatingly low product prices to work with for farmers. I remember sitting with a farmer one day, he was in trouble, the farm was going to get sold up, and I thought, if we get $35 a lamb, you'd be right. And of course, the markets weren't delivering that. Now, you can adjust that by whatever you like, whatever inflation index you like. The CPI would mean that farmers today would be getting $55 a lamb. And I imagine our budgeting would be even more difficult today given the increase in costs. Dairy farmers were getting $2.40 a kilo of milk solids. I mean, it's almost unheard of. And if we ramp that up by the CPI, we'd be talking about a payout today of $3.70. So this was a sort of the anvil that forged my early career, and going out to do things for farmers that were of value. The biggest value we could do for farmers then was increase their profitability, and that started to address all the other problems that were on the farm. So when Rezare set out, as we did in 2004, as a group dedicated to agricultural software development, often we sit around and think, is our strategy aligned with where the value is in the industry? Are we aligning our investment in resources where the value resides in the industry? So what we're going to do today is we're going to think, how might we align our investment with what top farmers are saying is important to them? And I can't think of any better way to start this workshop than listening to some top farmers. So that's what we're doing. I think consulting is also an extension of farming, and we'll listen to consultants after that. The farmers that we'll listen to have been through some process of change or intensive planning. And it's from those discussions that we hope you'll pick up some things about what they value. And maybe a successful outcome of this workshop is if you go home and think, hey, maybe we need a strategy refresh as well. So next we're going to listen to a presentation by Matthew Newman from MPI. Matthew, you've just started, how long have you been with MPI now?
Well, a year and a half.
Year and a half, so you're still in the honeymoon stage, and I imagine you've got wonderful visions that haven't yet been thumped down to the ground. So Matthew, I'd love to hear them.
Well, I'll just start while this is coming up and just say it's great to be back in Waikato. Lovely day. Good to see some old colleagues and some current colleagues, and I'm sure perhaps some futuristic colleagues as well. My role at MPI is team leader for farm monitoring. Now, I bet there's many people in this room that have had connections, have been involved in, or have used data from farm monitoring over the years. Let's have a show of hands. It's quite a lot, particularly a few with the grey hairs. And look, this is important. This is important about having a really good database so that we can understand and analyse farm performance at a sort of more macro level. So not necessarily for an individual farm at this level, although it comes from an individual farm and can be used for that. This is about, for the government, understanding farm performance, and it leads to a lot of opportunities, deeper knowledge, understanding farm systems, which we in this room take for granted, but there are an awful lot of people in government organisations that don't understand farm systems, and that you know, changing one lever leads to a whole lot of other things that need to happen, or the impacts are going to happen across the farm. So my role here, you know, in this particular case is to reinstate farm monitoring program and to make it great, which doesn't necessarily mean making it what it was. It actually means making it better. And our objective, my team's objective, is being the experts on farm performance, and we're doing that through data. It's a knowledge project, and it's not knowledge just for us, it's knowledge for everybody, our wider stakeholders, if you like. We're fortunate to have some good funding through to June 2023, so another couple of years to run on that. And we've partnered with our sector groups, beef and lamb, DINS, or the dairy industry, Dairy NZ, FAR, and the horticulture industry. And we're still scoping with the horticulture industry, with the product groups, what we're going to do around farm level data. But the benefits are great, and it's about improving implementation of key primary industry strategies. It's about understanding farm level performance, and about thinking about the holistic nature of that, joining the dots, and opportunities for cross-sector analysis that's never been done. It's about providing the truth, and I hear lots of comments, lots of views within the walls of MPI and various places, and I know damn well that they are not based on good facts, and in some cases they're quite shoddy thinking, to be honest. And what we need to be able to do is have good analysis from good, robust data to be able to prove those views right or wrong. What we're doing, so it's around physical, financial and environmental data. When I thought about how we're going to do this, the thing that jumped out at me, particularly in the environment space, was FEPs, farm environment plans. And all farms have to have one in the future. I believe it's 2025, but that's nearing quicker than we'd like to think. And part of that is an overseer account. So that's what we're doing. So I thought about what are the benefits here? What are the benefits for the farmer? And we talked about that. Fraser mentioned value this morning. What are the benefits for the farmer? Having a farm environment plan provided for no cost to them, for providing data that can be used, anonymised data that can be used by the sectors and the government to understand performance in a broad contextual sense. So the benefits are there for the industry, the benefits there for the government in terms of the data. You can see the numbers of farms there, 900 dairy farms, similar number of sheep and beef farms, around 150 to 200 deer farms we're targeting. Now that might seem like a small number, but you've got to think the deer industry has never had farm level information before. And it actually represents around about 20 to 25% of their industry, of the numbers of deer farms. Arable, around 200 farms, and horticulture yet to be scoped, but we're looking at around 300 to 600 orchards. And that goes across apples, kiwi fruit, avocados, summer fruits perhaps, and wine grapes are probably the key ones that we're targeting for this program at this stage, the larger ones, and there might be opportunities in the future for some others. So, as I said, partnering with our sector groups, they are subcontracting consultants to gather the information and also to provide information back to the farmer as well. So sort of benchmarking information, their own information back, and some of the key findings from the program. We're only just starting. We've got a long way to go. And this is a long-term view, even though it's a short-term project, if that makes sense. So we've got funding to June 2023, but we've got a lot, this is getting it back on track for the future. One of the cool things that we're doing is thinking about how you analyse a farm environment plan. So not only from a farmer's perspective, but now collectively, if we had 2,500 FEPs, what information can we pull out of them? What's really useful? And that's been quite a challenge. It's been quite hard because it's very qualitative information. It's about risks and mitigations. And so you have to treat them like risks. And so we have to try and work out how to turn that qualitative information to quantitative information. So you can use a Likert scale. Looking at the likelihoods and consequences of some of the risks, where are the farmers at, what have they done, and trying to come up with it hasn't come up very well, but a spider diagram so that you can visualise where a farm sits, or where a sector sits, or where a region sits, and some of the things that are being done well, and some of the things that aren't being done well. And then you can get down into the details from there. So in terms of the future, we want to get farm monitoring back on track. That's about historical data. It's about very rich, granular data, really robust. Quality is important. So if I challenged you, if you had a whole lot of data sitting in front of you, how would you know if it was quality data or not? You wouldn't. It's bloody different. And we've come up with a 7-step process to determine whether we've got quality data or not, and where some of the holes sit. There's opportunity, as I mentioned, for leading edge analysis, and it's all about knowledge and what we do with that. We want to start talking to our stakeholders and understanding what their needs are from the data. So if I challenged you and said, you do whole thousands of attributes for thousands of farms across the country, what do you want? What would help you in your roles, and how would you want to access it and use it? So that's what the sort of information, the sort of questions that we're going to ask people over the next few months. One could say we probably should have started there before we raced out and started getting a whole lot of data, but it's all right. So as I said, farm monitoring, back on track, it will continue into the future. I can guarantee you it won't look like it does now. This is about the current, we're building a base currently where we're at. We have to be smart. We have to think about how we can access this data, how we can capture this data more efficiently, have some really good analysis and use that. So it's absolutely crucial, and to ensure that we get good decisions being made across New Zealand and for our farmers, and that we understand the impacts of these decisions and the unintentional consequences that sometimes occur. And we quote to finish, so without knowledge, action is useless, and without action, knowledge is futile. That's the space that we're playing in. So, thank you.
Well, that was excellent, Matthew, and you know, what really excites me there is it's pan-industry. We've never had that before. So it's going to be quite complicated, but I'm quite comforted to know that you're doing it, because you achieved an enormous amount in the dairy industry with Dairy Base, and it's just fantastic seeing your skills go over to help get a unified.
So I guess, stand in front of the microphone, just a few reflections on the day, and I'll keep this brief. So the first thing I thought about was the messages from our practitioners in the morning sessions. So the people, the farmers and the people who are working closely with farmers. And they talked about, unashamedly stolen from your slides, folks, people, planet, performance, and I've just kind of expanded those out a bit more. We talked about the importance of people, and I think we've reflected on that during the day. There were questions about what's stopping data interoperability, and the answer was people. There were questions about how do we get adoption, and we talked about the need for specialists, and so a lot of it comes back to the importance of people in our thinking. Mathematical equations are great, but people are very important. Planet, we've talked about the need to make sure that we're farming within the constraints that we've got and doing the right things for our land and our planet. Performance, and I've added, and productivity there, and you know, Martin's questions are good ones. We want to include, we know we often fall into talking about improving production, right? And we know we don't want to talk about improving production, we want to talk about improving productivity. The measure of what we're getting out, and the bottom line measure of that is profit, as long as the other factors are equal for the amount of inputs put in and for the amount of emissions going out. Then something that I got out of those farmers who talked this morning is their strong emphasis on planning, on the processes that they and their teams follow, the communication of those processes, and the precision with which they go and measure. They identify what are the important things for them to measure in their systems, and they go and measure them. And together that, you know, that was talked about as systematisation, turning things into a system that's repeatable, and I think that's key. So some great learnings for me in those areas today. We talked, for those who are involved in research and in governance, we talked about capabilities, and I guess my reflection thinking about some of the presentations was the amount of amazing capability that we've had leveraged in this sector over many years in our science R&D and all of the things that underpin that, some fantastic capability, and I think that goes to the heart of what you were talking about before, Graham. Other countries are investing in their core competencies, and in New Zealand we've made a lot of investment, not enough, but a lot of investment in building capability in pastoral agriculture and its underpinnings, which has been fantastic. There's some really valuable collections. We talked about the virtual climate stations, we talked about S-maps, and we've talked about some of the other collections that are out there. I didn't want to just say databases, because there's a lot more than just databases. Almost every speaker talked about the opportunity to collaborate further, to engage further, to use data from other sources, whether that's climate stations or soils data or any of the other data sets that are potential to use, and the opportunity to engage together. And we see that in some of the collaborative projects that have been done. We talked a little bit about data integration, and to me there's some real benefits in being able to link data and to have common identifiers and all of those necessary things that make it easier to connect the dots between systems. And also consistency in meaning and interpretation, and are we talking about the same things? And then this afternoon we talked about our, and you know, I'm playing some fun games here, but we talked a little bit about sensing. We started off by talking from space, which is very much built on sensing technologies. But I thought, particularly when I was listening to Dean as well, that's another great example of sourcing data so that farmers aren't having to go and measure it. You know, imagine if you as a farmer, and farmers did have to do this, some still do, go and attend every sale yard that they can so that they know what the prices are. Try and keep their own little book so that they know, you know, where prices are heading. But there are tools that can deliver that data just as space can deliver pasture cover data. And I think we saw through the work that Ravensdown and Balance are doing a bunch of other sensing and use of predictive tools to take some of the effort that farmers would have out of sort of capturing data and making sense of it. A lot of the tools we looked at, including FarmMax and including the tools that Ravensdown and Balance have been working on, have been around making predictions that help people make either recommendations or decisions, and that's really powerful. And I think there's been some, again, a thread of discussion going through around, well, how do we then extend those services out? If you've got other crops you want to measure with space, how do you do that? Can we extend those services? If you've got some data that's in FarmMax or one of these other tools, how do we make it available? How do we make data flow into FarmMax? I think my other observation is that we're still at the stage where many of these tools, maybe space being an exception here, require the assistance of somebody, a specialist, to help interpret them, right? Whether that's a rep or an agri-manager in a fertiliser company, and we know there's good reasons why we should be doing that, or a consultant to help you with FarmMax. And I'm not saying, you know, we know those roles are essential and important, but if we're to move to support for adoption and use, we need to think about how we kind of leverage the time of those people, right? So that they're doing the things that only they can do, and that our tools and our systems are easier to use so that specialists don't have to get involved at every step in the way. So I guess that's my kind of reflections on what we've talked about today. I hope that, like me, this has been of interest to you, that you've had your eyes opened to some interesting things that people have been doing and some opportunities. I think it's been great to have the input from the farmers and the practitioners to kind of ground truth what the problems are that we're trying to solve. And what we're hoping is that this conversation continues on. So if you're on Zoom or if you're here in the room, hopefully you've made some contacts or you've made some notes of people you should talk to, and we'd really encourage you to continue to do that. If there's any way that Rezare can facilitate those discussions for you, we're happy to do that as well. So thank you very much.